You're in the market for a new family SUV and you're overwhelmed by the choices available to you. We get it. This is a huge segment and models like these offer plenty of value for money. It's the first time we've been able to assemble these three particular cars in the same test. We've got the Toyota RAV4, which won CarsGuide's 2019 Car of the Year, and up against it are the Hyundai Tucson and the Kia Sportage, which will have their work cut out for them in this test. Now, importantly, they're all petrol powered, they're all automatic, and they're all two-wheel drive, because most of the time you'll be spending your time around the suburbs in these sorts of vehicles. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these contenders. For this test, we've got the Toyota RAV4 GXL front-wheel drive model. This time around, we've foregone the fancy and excellent hybrid RAV4 to see if the regular petrol version still cuts it. Up against it is the Kia Sportage SX Plus, which is a new nameplate for the range. It hasn't seen much in the way of changes in recent times, but it's still a compelling option in the segment. The Hyundai Tucson has continued to forge ahead in the segment, appealing to customers based on its size and its price. We've got the ActiveX petrol spec, which undercuts its rivals on price, but also has impressive standard kit. We know we'll see comments like, "Where's the Honda CR-V? Volkswagen Tiguan's the best, and Mazda CX-5 is the winner." But the fact is that these three are the models you've been asking us to review, and that's why they're here. Now, you can read the full detailed review at the CarsGuide website, and also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and also that bell notification icon so you can stay up to date with all our latest videos. We aim to get these three as close to one another on spec and price as we could, but there's still a bit of a gap between them. The prices you see here are before on-road costs. If you want to shop around, you can head to the CarsGuide site or to autotrader.com.au, where you'll no doubt find drive-away deals on each of these models. Read the full written review at carsguide.com.au for a comprehensive breakdown on equipment levels across all three models. It may have once been the go-to formula for hatchbacks, but each of these high riders has a 2-litre petrol engine, an automatic transmission, and front-wheel drive. The Kia's at a disadvantage when it comes to engine outputs, while the other two are perilously close. The Toyota is the only one with a CVT, or continuously variable transmission automatic, but it's a clever one with an innovative launch gear for smoother takeoffs. The others have 6-speed autos. For this test, we took all three of these models for an urban driving loop, including speed humps and roundabouts, as well as highway kilometres and winding roads. I didn't just test these SUVs on my own though. We had a bit of a family gathering in each of these models, with someone testing the back seat and also testing the front passenger seat, to find out which of these three SUVs struck the right balance when it came to driving in different situations. And here's what we found. The Hyundai was perhaps the most perplexing of these three, because it feels like it doesn't quite know what it's trying to be. It has overly heavy steering that lacks feel and makes for some uncertainty about how much you might actually need to turn the wheel, particularly at lower speeds. You might get used to it, but we know Hyundai can do better. We've seen it on their other cars. The Tucson's firmer suspension tune has an element of rolliness to it, as though the brand's Aussie tuning team was trying to find the right balance between comfort and control. It errs more towards the latter, with the suspension often being bouncier than its rivals in this test. Its engine offers enough spirit, and the transmission is mostly fine, shifting smoothly and choosing the correct gear in most situations, but the drivetrain can be thrashy under hard acceleration. The Kia's biggest letdown was its engine, because you can feel that it lacks the power and torque of its rivals, and that also means the transmission can be overly active, as it doesn't quite have enough pulling power to get where it needs to go. This was particularly noticeable up a steep hill climb we included as part of our testing loop. The steering of the Sportage is better balanced than the Hyundai, but it is still on the heavy side, as though it's trying to be sportier than it actually is. The Kia's suspension tune, also engineered for Australian conditions, is a nice balance between comfort and control. It doesn't spring back as violently over sharp bumps as the Hyundai, and deals better than the other two when it comes to rippled, rough surfaces. The winner for our on-road driving section of this test is the Toyota RAV4 GXL. It's an impressive thing. With the 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, it doesn't really have any difference to the other cars in terms of what's powering it, but it's the way that it uses its power, because it's got a little bit more power available, and it's got this 10-speed CVT automatic. Now, CVTs are continuously variable transmissions, so it doesn't actually have gears, but it does have stepped ratios, which does help it when it comes to getting around town. Plus, it's got an innovative launch gear system, which is essentially a real first gear in the transmission, and then it'll switch to CVT from there. And what it means is that you have smooth progress across the rev range. And although you do have to deal with a little bit of noise compared to the other cars, it's never too annoying. But it's not just the powertrain that we appreciated in the RAV4. The other elements, like the way that it steers, it's got a more consistent weighting to its steering than either of the other cars here, which means it's more predictable when you're going around corners, roundabouts, or if you're trying to park. And at higher speeds as well, it does feel pretty good to drive on a twisty road. The suspension is one of the sweetest elements of the RAV4 because it's set up to be a little bit softer than the other cars here, which are quite firm. Now, firm is good if you like to go on Sunday drives on twisty mountain roads, but if your Sunday drive consists of taking the kids to the netball or soccer, then this is probably going to be better suited because it is just a bit softer, a bit more comfort focused, and that's great for families. Probably the only downside of the RAV4 is that there's just a touch more road noise than the other cars here. And although you do notice it on the country road if it's coarse chip underneath, on roads like this in the city, you don't really pick it up. While the other two cars here are definitely impressive, the RAV4 was our winner when it came to driving. Over our testing, we also kept a tally of how these vehicles performed when it came to fuel use. Now here you'll see the claimed fuel use. That's what the manufacturer says each of these cars should use, and it's clearly advantage Toyota. And here you'll see what we actually saw on test when we took the figures at the fuel pump. We'll give you a sec to let it all settle in. All three of these models has 5 doors and 5 seats, but they vary pretty greatly when it comes to interior presentation. Models like these are known for being a bit of a solve-all for families when it comes to practicality, but there are some differences when it comes to the interior space. Let's take a look. The boot capacity battle is won by the Toyota RAV4, and easily. Cargo storage could be the difference between one of these SUVs being right for you or being ruled out. So to give you an idea of how they compare in the real world, we loaded up the CarsGuide luggage in each of these models and also our trusty pram. It's worth noting the Toyota is the only SUV here that misses out on a full-size spare wheel, if that matters to you. And if you like electric tailgates, then the Kia is the go for you. As soon as you sit inside the Toyota RAV4, you know it's the newest of these three cars because it's got smarter elements to the cabin design. Little things like a dashboard shelf where you can store loose items, and also wireless phone charging, which neither of the other two cars have. It's also got a nice touchscreen media system up here. There's hard buttons down the side, although it doesn't have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto at the time we're filming this. That's coming later in 2019. So that's its most out-of-date element when it comes to the cabin, because otherwise it's a really nice place to be. Although you might think because you're paying more than $35,000 that you should be getting leather seat trim. You don't, you get cloth seat trim. And speaking of the passenger seat, it's actually quite high. The base sits quite high. So if you're tall, you might want to sit in the passenger seat in case you're going to be a passenger often. And when it comes to the driver's seat, the comfort's really good, the adjustability is really good, ergonomically everything's really good, and it's also got manual seat adjustment, no electric seat adjustment. So there are a few little things that you might wish you had. You can get them up the model tree in the RAV4. Now, let's check out the back seat. So in each of these cars, you'll see me sitting behind my own driving position. Now, that means This seat is set for a 6-foot tall driver, and in the RAV4, I've got amazing legroom. There's plenty of space back here. There's also good headroom and good visibility out the windows, which is important if you've got little kids. There's also a pair of air vents down here to keep you nice and cool or warm in the back on a warm or cool day, depending on what you're doing. And also, there's a pair of USB points down there, plus there's 2 USB charge points in the front center console, plus an additional one. That means there's a USB point for everyone in this car, which is pretty amazing. Storage back here is decent as well. There's only one map pocket, but you do get a fold-down armrest with cup holders that are a little bit big. So if you've got a small cup of coffee, be mindful, they might tip over. Otherwise, back here, it is excellent. The cabin presentation in the Tucson Active X is pretty good, although it does feel a little bit aged compared to the other cars in this test. We do like that there's a big touchscreen media system that sits on top of the dashboard. It's easy to reach and there's hard buttons on either side, so it's pretty simple to use. And simplicity is the name of the game when it comes to this cabin, because everything is easy to control, although it doesn't have dual zone climate. It's just got manual air conditioning, so it misses out on that. It also misses out on an auto-dimming rear vision mirror. It's the only one here that doesn't get that. Plus, while it does have leather seats, it has manual seat adjustment, which is kind of a bit weird, and also has a key to start rather than a push button. So there are a few minor inconveniences when it comes to the cabin of the Tucson, but it does have good storage. There's a pair of cup holders here, a decent little storage bin in front of the shifter, and bottle holders in the doors. Mixed bag up front. Now let's check out the back. Cabin space in the rear of the Tucson is pretty good. I've got enough knee room, good headroom, and decent space across the back as well. Although one thing that you might notice is that the window line is a little bit higher and it's a little bit of a smaller glass house. So that might be an issue for smaller children that want to see out a bit more. But back here, there's a bigger issue because this car is the only one of these three that doesn't have air vents in the back. And that could be annoying on a really hot day or even a really cold day. It does have a single USB charge point. There's mesh mat pockets, bottle holders in the doors, and of course, a fold down armrest with cup holders. So it's okay back here, but it doesn't set any new standards. The presentation in the Sportage is really quite nice, although it is dominated by black. There are some nice silver elements that do break things up a bit. And it's also the only one that doesn't have the media screen coming out of the dashboard. So it sits a little bit more flush, and some people will love that. Although it does mean that it is a bit more distracting because you don't look at it in your line of sight. You sort of got to take your eyes off the road to look down at what you're doing. But there are a bunch of buttons below which are easy to use, and it's really ergonomically laid out as well. One of the other things we like about the Kia is that it has electric seat adjustment. The other cars don't have that, and that adds to the feeling of it maybe feeling a touch more plush than the other cars here, although it is more expensive, so you've got to keep that in mind. The space in the back seat of the Sportage is pretty good, and it's almost identical to what you get in the Tucson because these two are essentially twins under the skin. So there's enough knee room for me to sit behind my own position. I've got enough headroom, although it is a bit narrower back here than you'll find in the Toyota. And one thing that I will say is that because this has a bigger glass house, you feel like you can see more, but because it's tinted glass, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic back here. But you do get nice things like rear seat air vents and a USB point and a 12-volt charge point. There's hard plastics on the backs of the seats, so little ones won't attack the cloth with their feet, and that's pretty good. But there's also a set of cup holders in the fold-down armrest, and it's mostly quite nice back here. These are family SUVs, so safety is vital, and one of these three offers more safety equipment than its competitors. Here's a breakdown. All three models here have the maximum 5-star NCAP crash test rating, but the Tucson scored it in 2015 and the Sportage in 2016. The RAV4 got its top score in 2019 under the strictest criteria. When it comes to safety equipment levels, the standard fit list varies. The RAV4 gets high and low speed AEB with adaptive cruise control, which the others don't. And the Toyota also betters its rivals with blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert as standard. You've got to get the top spec versions of the others to get that tech. All have a reversing camera as well as front and rear parking sensors. The RAV4 misses out on fatigue monitoring, but it counters its rivals with road sign recognition. Be sure to read the full review for all the details. Each of these three models offers a level of appeal, and each is impressive in its own way. But against the CarsGuide review criteria, which you can read at the site, here's what we found. The Hyundai Tucson Active X is definitely good value, and it's comfortable and practical as well. But it is starting to feel a little bit dated when you compare it to the other two here. The Kia Sportage SX Plus looks plush and feels premium inside as well, although it is expensive, so you've got to factor that in to your decision. But the winner of this test is the Toyota RAV4 GXL, which is the most impressive because it's the best all-rounder. It offers better practicality, better boot space, more safety, more fuel efficiency, and all of that makes it our winner in this test. You might disagree with that, hit us up in the comments section below, but before you do, make sure you go to the carsguide.com.au website and read the full review. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget, hit subscribe, hit like, and also hit the bell notification icon to stay up to date with all our latest videos.